千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I would like to extend a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we all ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. The Tao Te Ching is roughly 2,500 years old. The I Ching goes back almost 5,000 years. They're both recognized major works in the Tao tradition, and despite the thousands of years between them, they talk about the same thing. That is, the essence that they point to is exactly the same. So let me take you through the correspondence with the major point that Lao Tzu is making in this chapter. Let's do that step by step. I want to start with an overview of East versus West in this idea of following the Tao of heaven, or the concept even before that of heaven being reflected by earth and by humanity. Let me start out with the Eastern conception. So the ancients believed all aspects of reality reflected each other. Now, we can see a very literal example of this reflection by going to a lake that is placid and reflecting its surroundings with crystal clarity. You can see the sky reflected in the lake. That is the most literal example of different aspects of reality, of existence, reflecting each other. Because the lake, the surface of the lake is like a mirror. Now, that's nature. For you and me, for us human beings, the most significant reflection will be heaven reflecting humans. So the ancients definitely had thoughts in that direction. They even had this idea that unusual weather must reflect unusual injustice. So if one were to delve into Asian drama, there are historical drama reflecting ancient thoughts and concepts. In one particular one that's extremely popular, an ancient character, a judge, is someone who enacts justice and has legends surrounding him for his actions and words. So in those episodes of this ancient drama, it is portrayed accurately that the judge will go to the window or perhaps the balcony or walk outside and notice that there's something odd in the skies. Maybe a part of the sky is showing an unusual color. When this happens, he would look to that and he would speak to his companion and say that, well, that unusual thing we're looking at in the sky, it must be an indication that there's some kind of injustice being done that we should investigate. So this is a very telling idea of human beings reflecting what is happening in the sky. Today, we know a lot more about the weather now than the ancients. We have more insights into the causes of unusual weather patterns. And we also know injustice happens all the time, regardless of heavenly signs. Nevertheless, we can take a step back and understand the idea of the ancients. We can understand why they might have thought this way. Even today, let me point this out. When it rains at a funeral, some will say that the angels are crying. That is actually a very similar idea. It's basically saying that heaven reflects the sadness being felt by humans at the funeral. So same idea, crossing cultural boundaries, East and West. Now, if we understand the thinking behind it, the reflection thereof, we can still observe and learn from the Tao of heaven. And in the West, this idea is also not foreign. I want to bring to you the expression from Western philosophy, the Hermetics. Hermeticism has this saying that is well known, as above, so below. And here's a symbol for depicting that. The symbol shows a tree, and the branches of a tree above has an interesting correspondence to the root system below ground. Now, the teachings of the Hermetics is not about how the tree is, it's not literally focusing on the tree being reflected above and below ground. Rather, it is talking about bigger things, like, for instance, celestial mechanics affecting earthly manifestations. As above, so below. Thus, the sun has an effect on the changing of seasons. In the summer, we get more sun. In wintertime, we get less. The moon has an effect on the tide. We get high tide and low tide. As above, so below. But this is not just about celestial mechanics. It is also about spiritual practices affecting earthly actions. So the Hermetics will also talk about kindness in your thoughts will be reflected in kindness of your actions. As one example, brutality in your thoughts will likewise be reflected in your brutal actions. In general, your beliefs and values will be reflected in your physical reality. We see that definitely as being true. So there's more. Back to the East. We talked about how every aspect of nature follows the Tao of heaven. So we can extend our examples to cover the sun, that the sun rises every day to bring us light and warmth, and then sunset comes, sun goes away. The sun is replaced by the moon. The moon provides illumination for nighttime travel. It provides romantic ambience for some. And then night transitions back into day. The moon leaves as quietly as it came. In both cases of the sun and the moon, we see the same pattern, that they show up, they bring benefits, and then they leave quietly without attachments. Now, it isn't just the sun and the moon, it's the same thing during the night when the stars come out. Ancient Chinese navigators traversing the seas used the North Star to determine the boat's latitude by measuring its height above the horizon. That brings a benefit. And then at some point, the night ends, day comes, the day dawns, and the star is gone. It has departed. It's done its work. And then clouds. The clouds bring rain. After it has done so, it dissipates. That the sky clears up. So all of these patterns are consistent. We see in each example, there's the arrival of that aspect of nature. There's a benefit brought to us from that aspect of nature, and then there's the departure. It goes away. So now I want to point out the clouds are especially important to an agrarian society. And that's because the rain affects the destiny of the entire community. It affects many people at the same time. So remember I mentioned that the I Ching was from almost 5,000 years ago. So put yourself back in those days, at the beginning of the agrarian practice, cultivating the land, planting seeds. In the early days of agriculture, human beings had not yet fully mastered the art of irrigation. So you basically had to have your farmland close to bodies of water, like river, lakes, and so on. If you are too far away from that, if you can't get to that water in a timely manner, then your best hope is that the rain will fall as it has in previous years, and that you won't go into a drought. And historically, throughout Chinese history, there's been droughts that lasted years, and that's a big problem. Therefore, the clouds were very important to the ancient humans who started to practice agriculture. This brings us to the I Ching. So the I Ching, written back in those days, has some penetrating insights into this entire process. The I Ching itself is divided into 64 hexagrams. And the Qian hexagram has interesting lines. Each hexagram has 6 lines, and the line can be unbroken or broken in the middle. This one is from the 5th. And it basically says, 飞龙在天，利见大人. Let me break it down for you. Literally, the characters, you've got flying, flight with the first character. The second character, you've got dragon. And then third character, in and sky. Together, the first 4 characters are saying dragon flying in the sky. Then we have a character for benefits, and we have a character for seen, being seen, and then we have da, which means big, great, 人, which means person or people. So what is this talking about? First of all, what is the flying dragon in the sky? It is certainly not a Hollywood movie special effects. What that is referring to the ancients, is that when they looked up to the sky, they may be pointing out, hey, look, dark clouds are rolling in. Look, the dragons are flying toward us, meaning the clouds are coming in. Now they know what's going to happen when the clouds show up. So they'll say, hey, time to gather up your tools and get inside. It's about to get wet. It's about to rain. Now, the clouds don't move all that quickly, but over time, you can see the motion. And the ancients described Shen Long, the divine dragon, that you can see its head, but not its tail. That's just a way to talk about how the movements of the clouds, describing it, its motion. So then the rain starts falling. It falls on everything, everyone, everywhere. It falls on farmlands, rivers, lakes. It is bringing the great benefit of water to the rice fields and all the places far from rivers and lakes, benefiting everybody. So the second set of 4 characters there, sometimes people will interpret that as saying that it is beneficial to see the great person. So who is the great person? Some interpretations say the great person is a sage. Someone else may say that, well, the great person is like an important government official. Yet another way to look at it, consistent with the interpretation about clouds coming in, the dragon flying in the sky, rain falling, is to say the benefits are seen for the greater group of people, for people in general, for everyone. The water is a great benefit that everybody can see. And what happens after that? Well, sometimes the dark clouds will stick around for a while. Sometimes they arrive quickly, dump a lot of rain, and depart equally as quick. The rain stops. The cloudy sky quickly clears up. The dragons have left. But regardless of how long they stick around, they have brought a lot of water. But then, in the last part, in the highest line in this particular hexagram, the sixth line, it says, 亢龙有悔. Breaking it down, it says, arrogant dragon has regrets. This used to be very puzzling to the students of I Ching because it seems to come out of nowhere. For talking about the clouds, how can the clouds be arrogant? Doesn't make any sense. Well, what the ancients had in mind was to say that if the dragons, the clouds, are arrogant and excessive, they end up with regrets. Okay, well, that's a little bit better, but it is still puzzling. Let's explore a little bit further to talk about what we're saying here. Arrogant dragon is a match. It maps directly to the overflowing cup, the over and sharpened knife. Excess described by Lao Tzu. The danger of not knowing when to stop. So, what we have talked about so far, the clouds coming in, the clouds bringing rain and then going away, all of that is embedded in the metaphor of pouring tea so that you can enjoy the fragrant tea. The falling rain and pouring tea, they both represent goodness. So the arrogant part, the next part, is what happens if we don't stop and the cup overflows, making a mess. So in the I Ching, when it says the arrogant dragon has regrets, it means going overboard, doing too much. So definitely for the farmers, too much of a good thing, water, is the disaster of flooding. The disaster of flooding is now the reason why you can see in this chapter, Lao Tzu specifically talks about arrogance leading to disasters, inviting disasters. So I Ching from thousands of years ago is actually saying the exact same thing in different ways, despite the gap of so many years. So the most important thing is that when we're talking about the Tao of heaven, the most important thing here is that the clouds come, bring great benefits, and then withdraw, just like all other aspects of nature. So it is exactly as Lao Tzu says, the Tao of heaven. When achievement is completed, fame is attained, withdraw oneself, this is the Tao of heaven. Now you have learned that this is actually linked to the concept of the dragon, the original concept of the dragon from the I Ching. So how is this different than what is usually talked about in the West? Or indeed in the world overall? Today, most people associate dragon, the term, with Kung Fu, especially dragon in that Eastern Chinese context. Dragon, yeah, Kung Fu. This is due to popular entertainment, movies and television shows. Because I have gone through the translation of those original lines of I Ching with you, now you can see the original meaning isn't necessarily about Kung Fu at all. It's all about the person who brings great benefits to the people. Now, of course, I recognize that you can combine the two to have it make sense. Say you're watching a movie, a martial arts movie. The protagonist in this movie uses Kung Fu to fight off the bad guys, to rid a community of an evil gang, and therefore has brought great benefits to the people. Wouldn't that qualify as dragon in the original Tao meaning? Yes, it does. It's just that for most people, 9 times out of 10, they have already forgotten the concept also applies in every other aspect of life, where you have an opportunity to do something good for the group. And when you have done something good for the group, you are the dragon. This is the forgotten true meaning of being the dragon. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Kung Fu. Now you know. To withdraw oneself, it also means the last part of it, you have to depart quietly. So to kind of round everything up that we're talking about, you begin the work with the spirit of humility. You continue in that spirit, you work for the good of all instead of yourself. And when the work is done, you follow the same humble path to the exit. So this is why Lao Tzu calls it that when you withdraw yourself after accomplishing what you set out to do, it is the Tao of heaven. So let's wrap up everything to see what we have learned. Okay, Lao Tzu begins with an observation about most people. Specifically, he's talking about how people mess up their lives by not following the Tao or the principle of moderation and balance. So Lao Tzu wrote about the arrogance represented by the overflowing cup, the brittleness of the oversharpened knife, so harsh, so judgmental, turning people off. Lao Tzu talked about the excess of the room full of gold and jade at risk of being lost in one way or another. And then Lao Tzu talked about the hubris when you pursue wealth and fame, when you're so zealous, so attached, so obsessed. So all of these are factors where people bring about disasters in their lives. So then Lao Tzu says, well, now that I have used the multiple metaphors, the 3 metaphors, to drive home the point, you can see it is the extreme and the excess that lead to the arrogance and disaster. And you can also see just by looking around in your life, this is indeed what often happens to people. So what is the better way? What is the path? What is the Tao? We want to avoid having those disasters or danger by following the Tao. When we cultivate the Tao, different things happen instead of disaster and danger. Instead of overflowing the cup, we know when to stop. Instead of using the sharp edge of intelligence, use the moderate, softer approach. Instead of acquiring ever more resources, embrace the happiness of contentment. Instead of blindly pursuing material things, build your prosperity in a Tao-centric way. And the way I have it in the slide, is prosperity without attachments. These is what will lead to the best path in life. So you can see the wisdom of the words from Lao Tzu when we lay it out this way. This is practical, this is useful. If we were to follow this exactly, we basically guarantee that things will turn out in the best possible way for our lives. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.